Sharon had exactly 4 boxes left to pack when the rain started. She could hear it before she saw it. That first low drumming on the window glass of the third-floor bedroom, the kind that started quiet and then decided it had something to say. She set down the folded sweater in her hands and looked at the gray Seoul sky pressing itself flat against the window, and for one moment she let herself feel it. All of it. The weight of this room, the familiar smell of lavender fabric softener she had chosen herself 3 months ago, the small constellation of crayon drawings still taped to the wall beside the wardrobe that she had not yet taken down because she kept telling herself she had time. She did not have time anymore. The letter from the agency had come 6 days ago. Politely worded, professionally distant. The Ryu household circumstances had changed, and her contract would not be renewed. Effective the 30th. She had read it twice standing at the kitchen counter while Somi was at school, and then she had folded it into a perfect square and placed it in the front pocket of her work bag and gone about the rest of her day as though something had not just quietly shifted beneath her feet. She was a professional. This was what professionals did. What professionals did not do was stand in a third-floor bedroom in Yongsan on a rainy Thursday afternoon, with 4 boxes half-packed and tears pressing at the back of their eyes because a 6-year-old girl with crayon drawings and an enormous heart had called them Iama by accident 3 weeks ago, and then covered her mouth with both hands and gone completely red, and Sharon had just smiled gently and said nothing and gone back to cutting the fruit. And somehow that one moment had lodged itself so deeply in her chest that even now, even packing her 3rd box, she could feel the exact weight of it. She pressed her knuckle against her sternum once, firmly, the way her own mother used to tell her to push grief back down when it had no useful place to go. Then she reached for the sweater again. She had found this position through an agency in Lagos the way she found most things, through a combination of research, recommendation, and the particular determination that had followed her from secondary school through a communications degree at the University of Lagos, and then a childcare certification in London, and then 3 years of nannying across 2 continents. She was 29. She was good at her work. She was realistic about what it was and was not. The briefing from the Bright Futures Agency in Seoul had been thorough. Widower, corporate finance, 1 daughter aged 5 turning 6, previous nanny departed at the end of her own contract term with no conflict, household well managed but emotionally sparse. They had used the phrase emotionally sparse twice, which told Sharon it was the actual concern and not a detail. She had arrived on a Tuesday morning in October with 2 suitcases and the specific calm she had developed for first days. The professional calm that was warm but boundaried, that said, I am safe and capable without saying I am available for everything you might need. Taesung had opened the door in his work clothes, clearly about to leave, looked at her for exactly 2 seconds in the particular way of someone processing information rapidly, and said, The orientation folder is on the counter. Somi's school is 6 minutes on foot. There are notes. And then he had been gone. She had met Somi 12 minutes later. Somi had come down the hallway in her school uniform with her backpack already on and looked at Sharon with her father's evaluating eyes and then said, Can you do cornrows? Yes. Somi had looked at her for 1 more full second. My last nanny couldn't. Sit down and we'll see if I pass. She had passed. Somi had gone to school that morning with neat 2-strand twists and come home asking if they could do something different the next day, and that had been the beginning of it. The real beginning, not the contract beginning. The first month was logistical and clear. Sharon learned the household, the grocery suppliers in Mapo-gu and Itaewon she trusted, the dry cleaner near the subway who handled Taesung's work shirts correctly, Somi's school schedule and the names of her 3 best friends, and the precise social dynamics among them, the pediatrician, the emergency contacts, the elevator code, the building's particular quirk of heating the 3rd floor slightly too warm. She learned Somi, the particular frequency of her laughter, the face she made before a lie, the way she chewed her bottom lip when she was thinking hard, the dreams that woke her on difficult nights, the questions she saved up for morning when she had decided they were safe to ask. She learned Taesung at a greater remove, the way you learn the habits of someone who was present but contained. He was fair and exact in his communication. He was on time and honest, and he thanked her specifically, rather than generically. He acknowledged when something had been done well. He did not acknowledge anything outside household function, which meant there were entire dimensions of him she had no access to and had not been contracted to explore. By the second month, she was aware that she was being careful in a way she had not been required to be careful before. Not because anything inappropriate had happened, because nothing had, and still she was aware of the kitchen counter at 7:15, of the particular way he said her name, of the moment 3 weeks in when Somi had fallen asleep on the sofa, and he had stood in the living room doorway, looking at the two of them, Sharon with a book, Somi's head against her knee. With an expression she had filed away and did not look at directly. Professional, she had told herself. Contracted. Clear. She had believed it too. The conversation she had not expected happened on a Thursday evening in the second month, when Somi asked, completely unprompted, during the quiet between finishing dinner and starting the bath, why she did not have a mother anymore. Sharon had set down the plates and sat back down and looked at Somi steadily. "Tell me what you want to know." Somi had asked 7 questions, in the methodical order of a child who had been organizing them for some time. She wanted to know if it hurt. She wanted to know if her mother had known she was loved. She wanted to know if it was her fault. She wanted to know if her father was sad. She wanted to know if being sad meant you were not okay. She wanted to know if someone could love 2 people. She wanted to know if Sharon had ever lost someone. Sharon answered everyone, honestly and at the appropriate level for a 6-year-old, without condescension and without the soft deflection she had heard adults use with children around grief. Yes to the hurt. Yes to the knowing. No, absolutely and completely no to the fault. Yes to the sadness. And yes, sadness and okay could live in the same chest at the same time. Yes, a person could love 2 people. And yes. She looked at Somi directly for this one. Yes. She had lost someone too. Somi had nodded with the gravity of someone receiving necessary information and then said, "Okay, can I have my bath now?" Sharon had run the bath, and Taesung, who had come home during the last 2 questions and had stood in the hallway not wanting to interrupt, had found her afterward in the kitchen and said very quietly, "Thank you." Not as a pleasantry. Specifically, to her. For the conversation he had not had enough language to have himself. That was the moment. Sharon understood much later. Not the kitchen counter. Not the elevator sound at 7:15. That had been the moment. She had started teaching Somi about Nigeria in the 3rd month. Not formally. It arrived the way most things arrived with Somi, through questions that were really requests. What is your country like? What do children eat for breakfast? What does your grandmother speak? What does your name mean? Sharon had pulled up photographs on her phone at the kitchen counter, Somi on the stool beside her, going through them one by one. The Lagos skyline at dusk, the market at Balogun, her grandmother's compound in Enugu with the red earth courtyard, the Osun festival in Osogbo, a plate of egusi soup beside a mound of pounded yam. Somi had looked at every single image with the total attention she gave things that interested her genuinely, which was not everything, which made it mean something. "Your grandmother's house is red," Somi said. "The earth is red there." "Why?" "Iron in the soil." "Is your grandmother alive?" "She is." "Is she nice?" "She is the most formidable woman I have ever met, and she has never once in her life been described as nice, which she considers appropriate. Somi had found this deeply satisfying. I want to meet her. She would terrify you. Good. Somi had looked at the photo once more. I would like to be terrified by your grandmother. Sharon had looked at the small, serious face beside her and felt something arrive in her chest and stay. The door to the bedroom opened without a knock. Somi stood in the doorway in her yellow school cardigan, small backpack still on, one sock pulled higher than the other, staring at the boxes with the expression Sharon recognized immediately. This was the face that came before the question Somi was not sure she was allowed to ask. You're home early. Sharon kept her voice easy. Did something happen at school? Somi did not answer. She looked at box number 2, at the folded edge of the green wool wrap visible over the top. And then she looked up. Are those your things? They are? All of them? Most of them. Sharon moved to the wardrobe, keeping her back to the room for one careful breath. How was the reading test? I got everything right. Somi said it without celebration. Sharon. Are you leaving? The rain picked up outside. Sharon turned around with a clean expression. Where did you hear that? Appa told me last night. Somi's voice was very small. He said your contract was ending. He said you were going back to London. Sharon had not known he had already told her. She had spent 4 days constructing the right words for this conversation, choosing the right afternoon, the right tone. She felt the careful architecture of that plan collapse quietly. Come here. Somi crossed the room and Sharon crouched down to her level the way she always did, so they were eye to eye. Somi's dark eyes were very bright. I do have to go, Sharon said, but not because of anything you did. Not because of anything at all that is your fault. You understand that? Somi's bottom lip moved. Then why? Contracts end. That is just how this kind of work goes sometimes. It does not mean anything was wrong. But I don't want you to go. I know. I want you to stay. Somi said it simply, the way children said the most devastating things, with no wrapper on them at all. I want you to stay forever. Sharon pulled her into a hug before her face could say anything she had not decided to say. She held Somi against her shoulder and breathed slowly, and felt the small arms lock around her neck with the fierce grip of a child who had already lost one person and understood, at 6 years old, exactly what going away meant. Ryu Taesung came home at 7:15. Sharon heard the elevator before the door. She had learned his schedule down to the small variations. 7 on ordinary days. 7:30 when the foreign accounts were difficult. 7:15 meant a day that was long but manageable, which meant he would check on Somi first, then eat, then sit at the kitchen counter with a glass of water and look at nothing for 12 minutes exactly, which was the amount of time he apparently needed to decompress before becoming conversational. She had not meant to learn any of this. She had simply been here. Somi was in bed, technically, in the way that meant she was lying down with her eyes fully open and her stuffed rabbit held against her chest. Sharon had settled her twice already. She was in the kitchen finishing the last of the dishes when she heard Taesung move through the entryway, heard him check Somi's room, heard the door open and close with the quiet that meant Somi had grabbed his arm and was talking. She gave them time. Then she heard his footsteps in the hall. He appeared in the kitchen doorway in his work clothes, jacket off, collar open, looking at her with an expression she had not catalogued before. She told me you two talked. She came home and found the boxes. Sharon kept her hands in the dishwater. I thought it was better to address it directly. That was the right call. He moved into the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, looked at nothing inside it, closed it again. I should have told you I already spoke to her. It would have helped. He turned at her tone. She had not meant the edge to come through, and she could not entirely regret that it had. You're angry. I'm not angry. I'm managing a child who is upset, and I would have liked the full picture before that conversation. That's fair. She had not expected him to say it so immediately, and the simplicity of it knocked one layer off the careful professional distance she was maintaining. She's going to be all right, Sharon said, less sharply. She's resilient. You've done well with her. We have. He said it quietly and then seemed to hear himself and looked away. You have been significant in this household. That is not nothing. It's a contract position. Sharon. She looked at him. I didn't want it to end either. He said it to the kitchen counter, which was entirely in keeping with how Ryu Taesung said things that cost him something. The agency's recommendation was to formalize the arrangement differently or end it. I chose the wrong option. The kitchen was very quiet. The rain made its steady argument against the window. What does that mean? She asked. He looked up at her then, directly, which he did not do casually. Ryu Taesung looked at things when he had decided to. It means I handled this badly. And I am sorry. She found the drawing on Friday morning. It was tucked under her pillow. Not a household pillow, but her actual pillow. The one she had bought herself and brought to this house, which meant Somi had been deliberate about it. She unfolded it carefully. 2 figures, one tall and dark brown with lines that were clearly meant to be locks, one small and round-cheeked, and between them a yellow house with a red door. Underneath, in the enormous, determined letters of a child who had recently learned to write, Sharon don't go. The spelling was wrong, on don't. Sharon sat on the edge of her bed in the early morning quiet and looked at that drawing for longer than was professionally advisable, and something in her chest that had been carefully managed for 6 days cracked open just a little. She was a nanny. She had been a nanny in 3 countries across 4 years. She had always held the appropriate distance. She had always known exactly which emotions were hers to have and which ones belonged to the situation and would dissolve when the situation changed. This one was not dissolving. She folded the drawing and put it in her coat pocket. At breakfast, Somi ate her toast with the quiet that meant she was planning something. Sharon recognized it the way you recognized a weather pattern. Somi's quiet was never truly quiet. It was simply activity happening below the surface. I have 1 more day, Sharon said when the toast was finished. Let's make it good. What do you want to do after school? Hangang. Somi said it immediately, which confirmed she had already decided and breakfast had simply been her gathering courage to request it. You always say we can go back and we never go back. Because it keeps raining. It's not raining this morning. Sharon looked at the window. The Seoul autumn sky had gone that particular clear, pale blue that appeared between storms, almost apologetic. Hangang it is, she said. Taesung called at noon. She was at the market near Itaewon, moving through the vegetable stalls with the focused efficiency she had developed for this neighborhood, when his name appeared on her screen. She looked at it for a moment before answering. I wanted to ask, he said without preamble, if you would consider staying through the end of next month. Why? Because Somi is struggling and I am managing a transition at work, and you are better at this than I am. Sharon stopped walking. A woman behind her adjusted course around her without looking up. The market moved on. Taesung. She said his name plainly and heard the slight shift in his breathing. That is not a reason. That is a delay. I know. What changed between 6 days ago and now? A careful quiet, the kind that meant he was selecting words. I made a decision while I was afraid, he said finally, and I have spent 6 days watching the consequence of it moving through my daughter, and I would like to unmake it. The market smell of ginger and persimmon moved around her. Sharon shifted her bag on her shoulder. You sent a letter through an agency, she said. I know. You could have spoken to me directly. I know that too. Why didn't you? Another quiet. Because speaking to you directly about anything that is not household logistics is something I have been avoiding since approximately the 2nd month you were here. Sharon stood very still in the middle of the Itaewon market with a bag of vegetables and a phone, and the particular sensation of a conversation arriving somewhere she had not given herself permission to expect. "I'll think about it," she said. "That is more than I deserve." "It is. I'll talk to you tonight." She took Somi to Hangang that afternoon. They went to the Uido section, where the river was wide and the walking paths ran clean along the bank, and Somi immediately abandoned any pretense of calm and ran ahead the way she always did, her small coat flying behind her, her voice coming back in pieces against the wind. Sharon walked at the pace of someone who wanted to preserve the afternoon, who wanted to move through it slowly enough to keep it. They ate tteokbokki from a cart near the bridge, Somi getting sauce on her chin and being entirely unbothered about it. Sharon found a napkin. Somi held perfectly still for exactly 3 seconds before moving again. "If you stayed," Somi said, between bites, with the conversational timing of someone who had also been planning this, "you could have the big bedroom. Appa said I could change rooms if I wanted." "Did he?" "He said it would be fine." Somi looked at the river. "I think he wants you to stay too. He just doesn't know how to say it." "Is that so?" "He looks at you when you're not looking." Somi said it with the total unself-conscious directness of a 6-year-old reporting observable facts. "Like this," she demonstrated, going very still and fixing Sharon with a look of carefully managed intensity that was, Sharon realized with some alarm, an entirely accurate impression of Ryu Taesung. Sharon looked at the river for a moment. "Finish your tteokbokki." "Did you hear what I said?" "I heard you." So finish your tteokbokki." Somi finished her tteokbokki. But she was smiling. They walked along the path afterward, Somi finding every interesting pebble and examining it with scientific seriousness before deciding whether it deserved a place in her coat pocket. Sharon walked beside her and felt the afternoon the way she had been trying to feel it since morning. Fully, without the layer of management she usually kept between herself and things that were going to end. This was her last day. She had told herself that this morning. She was going to feel it properly. The Han River ran wide and silver beside them. The Mapo Bridge caught the afternoon light at its edge. Somi had collected 4 pebbles and was evaluating a 5th, with an expression of genuine critical concern. "This one has a red bit," Somi announced. "Iron in the rock." Somi looked up at her. "Like your grandmother's earth?" "Exactly like that." Somi put the pebble in her pocket with great deliberateness and kept walking. After a moment, "Seoul has iron in it too, then." Sharon looked at the city rising behind them, the bridges, the buildings, the particular layered density of it. "It does." "So it's the same." "In that one way," Sharon said. "Yes." Somi nodded, satisfied with the expression of someone who had just confirmed something she had been working out for some time. They walked on. The rain came back at 5. They had been heading toward the subway entrance when the sky made its decision, and it was not the tentative morning kind. This was Seoul autumn asserting itself, full and committed, the kind that arrived without preliminary and simply was. Somi had not brought a hood. Sharon had an umbrella, but it was small, and covered Somi entirely and left Sharon's shoulders to negotiate with the weather independently. "Faster," Sharon said. Somi ran. Sharon kept up with her, one hand on Somi's shoulder, steering them toward the shelter of the subway canopy, and they were nearly there when Somi stopped. She stopped so suddenly that Sharon nearly walked into her. "Somi." "Sharon." Somi turned around and her face was doing all of the things at once, the things Sharon recognized and the things she did not, and her voice was very small under the rain. "Please don't go. I know you said contracts end, I know. But you're not just a contract. You make the rice the right way, and you know when I'm sad before I know, and you fix things when Appa doesn't know they're broken, and you're the only one who doesn't go quiet when I ask about Iyama." Sharon crouched down. The rain came down around them on the Hangang path, indifferent and continuous. You're allowed to miss her, Sharon said quietly. I know. Somi's eyes were very full. But you're here, and you're real, and I don't want to lose you too. Sharon put both arms around her and held her close in the rain, not caring about the umbrella or the water or any of the professional calculations she had been running for 6 days, and Somi's arms went around her neck with that same fierce, impossible grip, and against Sharon's ear, very quiet, barely above the sound of the rain. Iyama. Not an accident this time. Deliberate, chosen, given. Sharon closed her eyes. Taesung was standing outside the apartment building when they arrived. He was in his coat, no umbrella, clearly having come down when they were later than expected, and when he saw them coming through the rain. Sharon with the small umbrella deployed entirely over Somi, Somi holding Sharon's hand with both of hers. He stood very still on the pavement in the way that meant he was processing something he had not prepared for. Somi ran the last few steps and grabbed his arm with her free hand without letting go of Sharon. She has to stay, Somi announced, with the absolute authority of someone who had decided this conclusively. Appa, she has to stay. Taesung's eyes moved from his daughter to Sharon. The rain ran off his coat. He looked like a man standing in the exact moment he had been moving toward for months without the language for it. Inside first, Sharon said practically. You're both soaked. Somi fell asleep in 20 minutes, exhausted from the river and the rain and the enormous emotional labor of the afternoon. Sharon tucked her in, straightened the blanket, looked at the crayon drawing constellation on the wall, and went to the kitchen. Taesung was already there. He had changed into a dry shirt. He had made tea, 2 cups, which was either habit or intention. Sharon chose to treat it as intention and sat down across from him at the counter. He pushed 1 cup toward her. She called me Iyama, Sharon said. At the river. Not by accident. He held his cup with both hands. I know. She told me on the steps. This is complicated. Yes? I am her nanny. You were her nanny. He said it quietly. What you are now is something the contract never covered, and I wrote it badly. And I am asking you, not as an employer, to consider what you actually want. The kitchen light was warm. The rain was still there outside. What do you want? She asked him. He looked at her directly, the way he did when he had decided to. I want you to stay. No qualifications, no logistics, no distance. Not under contract. Not in the staff bedroom. I want you to stay because this house became something different after you were in it, and I was a coward about saying that before I nearly lost it. Sharon looked at her tea. I am not easy, he said. I'm aware. I work long hours and I am not good at the emotional vocabulary, and I have a daughter who is perceptive enough to be exhausting. She is extraordinary. She is. Something moved across his face that was not his default expression at all. You see her exactly right. You always have. Taesung. Yes. Stop listing your flaws and ask me what you are actually trying to ask me. A beat. Then, from Ryu Taesung, a sound that was almost a laugh. Not fully, but the shape of one. Stay, he said. Please. Sharon wrapped both hands around her tea. She looked at the window where the rain made its steady argument. She thought about the boxes in the 3rd-floor bedroom. The 4 of them, partly filled. The green wool wrap folded over the edge. She thought about a drawing under a pillow that said, Sharon don't go, in enormous earnest letters. She thought about a small voice in the rain making a deliberate choice. She thought about 12 minutes at a kitchen counter and a man who looked at things when he had decided to. The boxes are already half-packed, she said. I'll unpack them myself. The staff bedroom is too small. I'll sort that. I have conditions. Tell me all of them. She looked at him. He was looking back, completely still, with everything available in his expression for once, the carefully managed reserve entirely set aside. "I'll make a list," she said. Something in him settled, like a decision confirmed. "Gomawo," he said quietly. Not to the room, to her. When she finally unpacked the boxes 3 weeks later, she did it slowly. Not because there was urgency removed, there wasn't, but because she wanted to feel each item as it went back. The green wool wrap back on its hook, the books reshelved, the photographs back on the windowsill, the small carved figure her grandmother had given her, placed on the dresser where it had been since October. Somi supervised. "This one goes here," Somi said, repositioning a framed photo of Sharon's family by approximately 1 centimeter. "That is where it was." "Yes, but now it's better." "How?" "The light hits it better." Somi examined it with critical focus. "Your mother looks like you." "People say that." "Does she know about us?" Sharon folded an empty box flat. "She knows I decided to stay." "Did you tell her why?" "I told her some of it." Somi considered this. "You should tell her all of it. My Halmionim says women should tell each other the real things." "Your Halmionim is very wise." "She is." Somi moved the photo 1 more centimeter. "There. Now it's perfect." Sharon looked at the room, the photograph on the dresser, the window with its view of the Seoul skyline, the carved figure, the books, all of it back in its place. All of it, for the first time, feeling like exactly the right place. "Yes," she said. "It is." 3 months later, the crayon drawings were still on the wall. Not the same ones. New ones had been added steadily, a whole expanding collection, because Somi drew the way some people breathed. Continuously and without thinking about stopping. The newest collection included a family of 3 with increasingly confident proportions, a woman with long dark locks, a tall man with a slight wave in his hair, a small child between them with her arms stretched wide. Sharon was making jollof rice on a Saturday. The real kind, the kind her own mother had made with tomatoes from the market and spices she had finally sourced properly in Mapogu. The smell of it filled the apartment in a way that was particular and right, warm and deep, and entirely itself. Somi was at the kitchen counter doing homework that had been going for 40 minutes and was actually approximately 15 minutes of homework and 25 minutes of watching Sharon cook. "That smells like your special one," Somi said. "It is the special one." "For what occasion?" "No occasion. Saturday." Somi considered this with great seriousness. "Can I call Halmionim and tell her?" "She said she wants to learn." "After homework?" Somi went back to homework for approximately 90 seconds. Then, "Sharon. Are you happy here?" Sharon set the wooden spoon down on the rest and turned to look at Somi fully. The question was asked with the same directness as always. No wrapper on it. Just the clean, honest thing. "Yes," she said. Simply. Without qualification. Somi nodded, satisfied, in the way of someone receiving the answer they already knew and simply needed confirmed. "Good. Me too." The door opened at 7:15. Sharon heard the elevator before it. She did not turn from the pot, but the corner of her mouth moved. Taesung appeared in the kitchen doorway and looked at the rice, and then at Sharon, and then at Somi doing her homework with profound dedication now that an audience had arrived. "Jollof," he said. "Saturday," Sharon said. He moved into the kitchen, set his bag down, and stood beside her at the stove, and looked into the pot the way he had started looking into things recently. With actual interest, present, and unhurried. "Smells like the first time," he said. "You remember the first time?" "Second week. You made it on a Wednesday and the whole building floor smelled like something that had been doing this for centuries. I didn't know what it was. I looked it up." Sharon looked at him sideways. "You looked up jollof rice." "I looked up several things that second week." Somi made a noise of theatrical disgust from the counter. You are both so slow. It took you literally months. I figured it out in the first week. Homework, Sharon said. I'm doing homework. You are watching us and providing commentary. Same thing. Taesung reached past Sharon to adjust the heat on the burner. Not because it needed adjusting, she was fairly sure, but because it gave him a reason to be close enough that their shoulders were touching. And he left his hand on the counter edge just near hers, deliberate and unhurried, and said nothing, because Ryu Taesung communicated the things that cost him something in exactly the ways available to him. Sharon looked at the rice. She looked at the hand near hers. She looked at Somi bent over her homework, already smiling without looking up, because she had figured it out in the first week. Outside, Seoul moved through its Saturday. The Han River ran on somewhere beyond the windows. Somewhere in Mapo-gu, someone was playing music that came through faintly if the window was open, which it was, just a crack. Because Sharon always kept it cracked when she cooked, and now everyone in this household had simply accepted that as the way things were. The jollof rice was exactly right. Some things, Sharon thought, did not come with contracts. Some things arrived in the form of a crayon drawing under a pillow, and a child's arms in the rain, and a man who looked at you when he had decided to, and a kitchen that smelled on a Saturday, like every good thing she had ever carried from home. Some things you simply had to be brave enough to unpack. Drop a comment and type Saturday Jollof if you felt every single moment of this story. Annyeong, my loves.